Welcome to the Tech Exits podcast. Today, we're thrilled to bring you a special sellers panel, Women in Tech. You'll hear from women tech entrepreneurs who have successfully navigated the challenges of selling their companies as they share their unique insights and attempt to answer questions including what motivates entrepreneurs to sell their companies and how do they navigate the M&A process? What challenges do women CEOs face in securing funding and achieving successful exits? And how can entrepreneurs balance running a business while preparing for an acquisition? We'll also take a deep dive into the journeys of these remarkable women in tech. Moderating this panel is Anna Conejo, Director of WFS. Special thanks to our media partners, She Loves Data, for supporting this episode. Let's listen in.
Thank you and welcome to this special episode of Tech Exits. This month, we are excited to celebrate women in tech. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming our three speakers, tech entrepreneurs who've successfully navigated the challenges of selling their companies. Aušra, Courtney, and Dr. Suhaya, thank you for joining us. We'll start with introductions. Aušra, please share a bit about yourself and your company. What space were you in? What problem did you help your customers solve?
Glad to speak about this. So we are a Lithuanian payment institution called pure Lithuanian name Viena sąskaita. What direct translation would be one bill. And what we are doing, we are offering online solution for managing and paying household bills. We are consolidating invoices from various service providers. It can be gas, electricity, mobile, security, any kind, and into one accessible platform, and offering to users to pay them at once with one click. So we are pure financial institution, very strictly regulated by Lithuanian bank, and with a super huge brand awareness here in Lithuania. Every third household in Lithuania knows us and uses us for the recurring bill payments.
Wonderful, thank you. And Courtney, would you like to go next?
Yes. So my name's Courtney Caldwell. So happy to be here. And thank you, Anna, for the invitation. So I'm now the post-exit founder of a tech company called Shearshare. Shearshare is the first mobile app that connects salon and barbershop owners to individual stylists to fill their empty salon space on demand, which is why the industry is kind of nicknamed us Hair B&B. So in this way, salon and barbershop owners are able to monetize their excess capacity, an open chair or an empty suite. And stylists, whether you're a nail technician, a hairstylist, a barber, an esthetician, a massage therapist, or makeup artist, you get access to flexible, affordable space to work all over the world, starting at $15 a day.
Dr. Su, thanks for being part of this panel. I know you already had 2 exits. Please introduce yourself and tell our audience about your companies.
So I'm Sue Abuhakima. I've done 2 AI startups. The first one was for automatic summarization and classification of content for compliance like GLBA, HIPAA, and all the other Sarbanes-Oxley type of compliance. That company was sold to Entrust. The second company is for emergency communication, and we had a platform also based on AI agents that was sold to Genesis. Both companies were sold to NASDAQ-traded companies, and both are actually described in my book. I promise I won't flash it too often, but this is available on Amazon. If you reach out to me on LinkedIn, I could tell you how to get it. But essentially, both companies leveraged AI way before AI exploded in the last couple of years.
Courtney, what were your motivations to sell Shearshare?
You know, when my husband and I, who's my co-founder, when we started Shearshare back in, 2015, just as an idea, and then launched the beta app in 2017, we knew that we were going to be on the NASDAQ. We knew that we were going to be trading as a public traded company, and that was where we had our sights set. Then all of a sudden, we started to get inbound interest from strategics saying, hey, we'd be interested in purchasing Shearshare. And we thought, no, we're way too early. We're not ready to give this up. And we have so much good work that we still want to continue. Well, after COVID and in a postmodern world where it's very difficult to start getting funding, especially for females, and not to mention African-American females, we started taking those conversations a bit more seriously. We said, okay, we have, one option of fundraising, for the rest of our lives, or we could take these conversations to head and see if there's a play here. And thank goodness, those conversations came to fruition, and we just exited in October of last year. So still pretty new.
Aušra, what about you? What was the process like as CEO of your company?
Yeah, I probably have a little bit different story. I haven't created the company myself. I was onboarded and then managed the company for the key reason to sell it. So I'm like problem fixer everywhere. So I joined Viena sąskaita 4 years ago. Was hoping that still the selling process would take some specific time, up to 2 or 3 years, but suddenly we started negotiations with potential new shareholder after 6 months when I joined, and signed agreement. And after additional 4 months, we successfully closed the deal. So it was super quick, super fun, if you can name it fun, when you are newly joined and have to dive into the process and then understand not even the business itself, but the long story behind, because the company was operating at that time more than 10 years on Lithuanian market. But yeah, super enjoyed the process, super happy that made it quick and probably beaten expectations for what was on board to sell it. And I am still in the same company, working with the new shareholder, successfully growing and managing the company till now.
So you already had 2 exits. Were your reasons different to sell each, and how did the M&A process go for both companies?
So essentially, the reason for both companies to sell, we're a software company. We were doing AI before AI exploded, and we were being approached by buyers all the time for M&A, more like strategic buyers that needed our products for their product portfolio, or their customers asked for it. Like in the case of Entrust, their customers asked for something to check the content before it was encrypted. And in Genesis's case, they were transitioning to software from being a mixed hardware-software play. So they wanted to be more in that process. But the bottom line for both companies was the same, as to make money for the investors and the founders. So in both, we exited for that reason. And just like Courtney, we did consider IPO at some point, but the cycle is longer, and also the compliance requirements for IPO are huge. It's pretty intense, if you will.
We are aware that you had Quorum as your Quorum advisor. So why did you choose them? And what did you learn about your experience with them?
So certainly both, we've been in touch with Quorum for 25 years now, I think. Certainly they were active around our first play and around our second play. While we didn't engage them specifically in terms of a contract, we've always been talking to Quorum, and we found them an excellent advisor. So I actually encourage people to get in touch with them. In terms of the 2 processes, the first one, we were approached, we were going into an OEM discussion with Entrust, which was an encryption company, and they wanted to test our products. And the board of directors saw the potential for acquisitions before we did, because, they wanted to test our product and potentially become an OEM or original, like a partner of an OEM. And so what they did is they took the product in-house, they tested it, and then they asked for our financial statements. So the board saw that, okay, they're kind of serious and they're trying to set a price. In the second case, it was like classic. We were probably being approached by about 4 or 5 or even 6 players at the same time for acquisition when we were doing the emergency communications product, because that integrated all the methods. So if somebody walked in with a gun to an airport or to a school, we had automatic discovery technology that would allow you to immediately notify everyone in the airport without even knowing their phone numbers that there's danger, and then give them a map to get out. So we were being approached by a lot of people for that capability. In that case, their VP of sales at the time gave me a call in January of 2020, just before the pandemic hit. and said, Sue, how would you like to sell your company? And I said, no, I don't want to sell it. But then I went and talked to my co-founder, CTO, and he said, listen, Sue, we should have at least a discussion, regardless of where it goes. And so I did my acid test, which is I sent them my NDA, my non-disclosure agreement. And I thought, well, they're NASDAQ traded, so they'll probably say, no, we can't sign it. We want to sign our own. And no, they signed it overnight. So I knew they were serious. So that's the two process approaches, I guess, if you will.
That's a great litmus test, Dr. Sue. That's a great litmus test.
Thanks,
And
Courtney.
very similar to your story. So we were introduced to from I think Hearst Corporation by way of EY. So one of our strategic investors was Hearst Corporation. And Carlton Charles, who's the treasurer there at Hearst, told us about this wonderful program at Ernst & Young called the Entrepreneurs Access Network. And so there's a great lady who runs the program named Neat Reader of EAN. And we were sitting in a summit one day, and the gentleman who was speaking up on stage said, everyone in this room should really be on their second and third company. And I don't know why, but at that time, that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. And so after that session, we were chatting more about, how could we even start the process? Yes, we had some inbounds, but we kind of deleted those emails or threw them in the trash immediately. But now that we want to take this more seriously, how could we revitalize, such a process? And so we were introduced to the Quorum Group, and they've been amazing mentors and advocates for Shearshare, especially being two non-technical co-founders, myself and my husband, figuring out how to navigate. We didn't end up leveraging their knowledge base through the M&A process, ended up getting an M&A consultant that was introduced to us by one of our current investors. But having that kind of mentorship and being able to email someone at midnight about a random question was extremely beneficial to us throughout the entire process.
Selling a company is challenging. What about the process was the most difficult for you personally and for the company? Aušra, please share your thoughts.
Probably can name two key moments there. As I mentioned, I was a new seller, joined the company only a few months before the process started. So sure, for me, it was super short time to dive into the business, understand, dig the past facts, but okay, gather the power, made it. And probably the second challenge was change management. Again, new person, new shareholder, like huge again step for me and huge change, but the huge change also for my team. I am new, probably the new shareholder is coming. So yeah, to calm down all their emotions, because still in my part of it, in my business, people and employees are the key value. They are delivering the result and the product itself. We are providing services. We are not like making some stuff or goods which are selling. So probably those two moments was the most difficult and challenging, and at the end was happy that managed to overcome those challenges.
Because your story is very different from myself and Dr. Sue's, right? You stepped into this brand new role. Like, did you have an advocate out of the box who you were able to identify as you jumped into the leading the executive team, or did that come by challenges?
Actually, was standing alone or left alone. It's like crazy story with this. The shareholder whom I joined, who wanted to sell the business, I knew perfectly it's not the first business I stepped to help with some issues or tasks. But yeah, previous CEO was away for already half a year. The team managed the company. It felt how they understood it. It should be the way to manage. So, at that moment was sitting and thinking, okay, even do not know whom to ask some specific questions, not like specialist type questions. Yeah, and here due diligence started also with the consultant involved who perfectly knows the process, who are asking constantly you like way story behind. But yeah, it was a good cold shower, probably also gave me possibility really to dive super deep and quite quickly understand the business. It's not like the new thing for me managing the financial institution, but anyway, each business, each model, it differs. It has many ifs around, and then you still not only have to run the business, to run like M&A process itself, you have to run the core business. You never know at which step your potential buyer would say, goodbye, thank you, was nice to see you, was nice to look deeper into you, but let's go our ways. So yeah, but challenges, yeah, we women, so we love challenges. So
I love that. That should be on a t-shirt.
So, was your experience different than Aušra's and Courtney's? If so, in what way?
I think for us, if I think about the process and what was difficult, and then also I was surprised that I found both exits very long because they were both to NASDAQ traded companies. So the diligence was huge. It was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of documents. Certainly in the second exit, there were many lawyers involved. Like we had our own M&A lawyers, but on their side, they had a team of dozens of lawyers. So that was huge to deal with. And don't forget that we were being bought by an American company in Canada, but they weren't in Canada. So they established a Canadian arm to buy us. And so there was a huge amount of process going on. And at the same time, they had huge customers. Like we had customers in the NFL, we had Fortune 100 customers, and we were dealing with all that business stuff. And one of the things that we learned in the first company that we applied in the second one was that we had to tell our team something. They were very suspicious. As a matter of fact, in the second exit, the company that eventually bought us had prematurely set our address as their Canadian address, if you will. So my front office staff were getting letters that were for them, but they were in our office. So that was really funny. But anyways, we told our teams that we were going through audits. Like in the first company, we said, because it was post .com, right? When everything blew up and all the markets crashed and so on. We told them that the board of directors is trying to get a valuation on the company. And so there were these auditors, literally, there were auditors in our offices for like weeks to try and establish a valuation and asking a lot of questions to the tech team, to the business team, et cetera. And the second one, similarly, we said the board of directors is asking for a valuation, and our team was very cooperative with them. It was really interesting. And we weren't allowed to say anything to our team until the press release was issued by the NASDAQ traded companies, right? Because you can imagine anything we say in public could harm their stock or change things or anything. So we had to, zip it. And so it was quite challenging not to tell your team the truth. But the good thing about that is we kept them very, very focused on operations, on the customers, on support of the customers, on, getting new revenues and so on. And so to me, the only big surprise, which I had never experienced as a founder, co-founder, CEO, was the whole diligence and the hundreds and hundreds of documents that we had to go through and letters and things that we hadn't looked at for years in terms of the company that we had to produce to make sure everything was safe in the transaction. And thank goodness we actually managed to close the deal.
Aušra, did you have any surprises during your transaction?
Can't say that faced surprises. As I mentioned, wasn't the first AMA in my life or business transformation processes. They are so quite close to the same process. So no, wasn't surprises. Had the good advisors also who helped on many questions. So no, and sure, a lot depends on the second part, who will be the seller and what the requirements will be. So yeah, but yeah. One is to find it, to sell the idea, and then second part is to successfully close the deal, where you have also to fulfill KPIs, is to keep business up and running, still grow in that phase, show that is real potential of the idea which you successfully sold.
Courtney, were you surprised by any of the steps in the process, and why?
I think maybe, and I probably should have known this because we were founder-led sales anyway, that you as the founders, you're the best salespeople. I think initially when we were first starting talking to investment bankers and M&A consultants, we thought, oh, this would be awesome if we can just kind of hand over our baby and they go sell it and find all the buyers. What ended up happening was that we knew our buyers. We had relationships with our buyers. We had partnerships with these folks. And so I think that surprised me. I kind of had in my mind that it was going to be somebody popping out from behind the bush saying, we're going to add a couple of zeros to that valuation. And essentially, it was someone who we'd already kind of been arm in arm with. And so that was a little surprising for me. I think the timing of it all was surprising for us. We started the process, officially kicking it off July 1st of 2024. And we ended up selling on October 18th. So that took, 3 months or so, 3.5 months or so. And everyone along the way kept telling me it's going to take twice as long, just get your site set on, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. Had tons of founder friends who, had someone take them down to the very, very end. And then they had to start all over again with a brand new buyer. Had people who had sold in, less than 90 days. So a little bit all over the board. And so I was trying to map in my own mind as I'm doing this mental gymnastics on what would the timing really be like. And so for me, I thought it was going to be a good 6 months, a solid, 5 or 6 months, but ending up, in 3.5 or a little, south of 4 months was a surprise for me. A good surprise, but it was a surprise for me. I think if I had told myself, be prepared to not be in your business 24/7 and obsessing over your customers in 3 months, I probably would have been in a better place as I exited and now am in this new reality.
What about you, Sue? Perhaps on your second deal, you were more experienced than the first one, with less room for surprises. Was that the case?
Well, it's interesting because when I'm listening to Courtney and Aušra speak, I'm thinking that on the first deal, the biggest surprise was the fact that some of our team really didn't want to exit. And so when we finally could announce to our team and to key people in the team that we are exiting, it was a little bit of a mutiny of sorts. And I actually do talk about that a little bit in the book. And so it's sort of trying to work with your team that really love the startup and love your management and leadership of the company so much, they don't want to exit. They don't want to change into a new driver, if you will. So that was one big surprise. The other one is interesting in that between the two companies, and we learned this from the first startup, there comes a point where the founders, the entrepreneurs, the original people should exit and should exit gracefully and should exit faster. And so in the first case, I think we were tied up for about 3 years, the co-founders. And in the second case, they didn't tie us up per se. It wasn't it was more like wasn't pay to play kind of model. It was a model where, in the first case, part of the exit was dependent on 10% of revenues. So we're in there working hard with the buyer to increase revenues, if you will. In the second case, it wasn't like that. It was to nurture these amazing customers that we've had over the time frame. But we realized pretty fast that we wanted to exit ourselves as the co-founders. And so in the second case, I think within a year, both myself and my co-founder were out. In the first case, it was 2.5 years. So I would recommend to people looking at exit, and I write about this in my book as well, write yourself out of the deal, which means give them a transition period of, if they'll accept it, a month, if they won't accept it, 2 or 3 months, and negotiate from there. Because once you exit, once you sell your company, especially as a co-founder or founder, you've created this baby, if you will, and you had control over everything before, the technology, the business strategy, the customers, etc. But now, once you sell it, you've been given a lot of money to give control to somebody else. That you should get out and get out gracefully. So that would be my recommendation there. That was a big surprise for us.
That's really good, Dr. Sue.
Thanks, Courtney.
Let's talk about non-negotiables when considering your transaction. Sue?
So the big lesson we learned from the first company to the second is you better accept a price that you're going to live with forever, if you will. In the first company, we were naive. We were tech people. I had been running an AI lab in government R&D. I decided that the world needed automatic summarization and classification. Then the .com became the .bomb, and we switched over to compliance. So we were learning the whole business stuff as we were flying through this strategy. And so we ended up accepting, if you will, almost like a range of a price at the end of the deal, where if we achieved certain objectives at the end of the deal, which was 3 years, we would get a higher number. And we had a whole bunch of investors. And I think Courtney mentioned this. We never raised venture capital in both startups because I think as a woman trying to raise capital, whether you're a minority or not, venture capitalists don't know how to deal with us, right? Some of them think we're going to get pregnant, we're going to disappear, we're emotional, they're going to lose control, they don't like us. So from that perspective, I think it's very important to look at customers as your mainstay in terms of revenues and keeping your business running. And I mean, 96% of companies never raise venture capital. Only 4% ever do. And for women, it's 0.01%. That's even worse. But anyways, that aside, I think the important thing there was to make sure that you have a number at the end. So the second company, and by the way, the first company, we turned down the first offer. And they had to come up with this formula that then we would accept. The second company, I think we turned it down several times. They kept on coming back with a number. We'd say no. Number, no. And the reason we could do that is because there were other people waiting in the wings that we could go to if this all blew up, including going to Quorum and saying, start a process.
Yeah, I was going to say that made me think about a couple of things. So for us, being in it for, almost a decade, right? Of, working behind the scenes of the stealth organization at first, growing the business to, one point in time, we had about 20 employees. We had, Shearshare stays in more than 1,013 cities, more than 70,000 businesses using the platform. Partners like JCPenney salons, Lloyd's of London providing the by the day insurance, which was a first for our industry. One of the things that we thought about was, okay, where's our family right now? And what is it that makes the most sense for us going forward? Do we want to continue to be a part of the business? Because beauty and small businesses and beauty and barbering are things that we absolutely love. It's an industry that's literally fed our family for like 30 plus years. Or do we want to kind of hand over our baby to its adoptive family and ride off into the sunset? And we looked really long and hard about where, the health of our, parents were. Our son recently graduated from the United States Air Force Academy and then was drafted by the Las Vegas Raiders. So now he's a professional athlete. So Dr. Sue, when you said NFL, my heart just like is beaming since that's one of your clients. And then we said, okay, do we want to do something different after this? And so we're still pretty young. I mean, my husband's in his early 50s. I won't tell you my age, but, we said we think that one of the non-negotiables for us as we sell Shearshare is that we get to exit the business as well. And so that was a little difficult because not every buyer was interested in hearing that. And we knew that going in, that if we put all of our cards on the table at first and say, hey, this is something that's a non-negotiable for us, there were going to be people who either pushed back or said, no, I'm not interested anymore. And so, but it was so important for us that we knew the right buyer, the right partner in this transaction, that they would see the value in the business that we had built and the relationships that we had built and this innovative pioneering, space as a service in the beauty and barbering industry that we had built and still seeing the value in that. And so thank goodness, we found a buyer who, was fully aligned.
And what about your non-negotiables, Aušra?
Mine, again, story is different. Yeah, I'm not the owner. Do not have doubts about the price or business itself. So yeah, I came to the company and understood where the main asset and value is. So my non-negotiable part was the team. First agreement was that I still will be and stay at least for a while in the company with the new shareholder. So I needed my army who successfully built the company, who has the deep sense of ownership and truly believe in the product which they are building. I needed them to go to this journey together with me. So my main goal was to show how the perfect are, how they are delivering, that they are key people here, not even I myself. So yeah, my one of key negotiables was if I'm staying, the key persons also should stay. And they are still, none of us left the company. So it's already the third year past after the deal is closed, and then we still are growing. We still believe in the company. They're doing geographical expansion at the moment. So everything is fine.
Thank you, Aušra. And moving on to the next question. How did you balance running the company and getting things done during due diligence?
I think one of the things that really helped us, besides telling our team we're going through an audit, which wasn't true, was that we've always built really strong team with very strong executive. Now, in the second exit, don't forget it was during the pandemic. So it was kind of great. So the only people in the office were the executives and everybody else was at home working remotely, right? So you could talk more openly. We could have the business calls openly and so on. And I think it was really interesting. So what we also did that I think was really useful during the M&A process is we really had an incredible set of customer opportunities, if you will. And, many of the sports stadiums, the airports, and various places that we could, hospitals, we could be selling this product to. And so what we did is we kept our team focused on all business stuff, all the customers, what was going on with them. We kept the technical team focused on new features, integrating gunshot detection, panic buttons, all that good stuff. And so as you kept your team really busy, then you were able to run the company because we were delivering to customers who were paying us revenues to keep our lights on. We had to keep all that going. We couldn't just stop and say, oh, we're going to be bought so we don't have to run the business anymore. So, and they wanted to buy a viable business. They didn't want to buy if you will, a PowerPoint spreadsheet or a PowerPoint deck. So that's what we did. And we lent on our teams, our executive teams, and we also kept on running everything, operations and so on, and kept on everybody focused on the customers.
And Courtney.
Yeah, I think back, prior to M&A, our executive team had kind of been running through a process where every month we would have a different head of department and kind of run the business. My husband and I really wanted to kind of litmus test, to make sure that it wasn't us that was helping to push business forward or drive for results. And so we gave the opportunity to all of our executive staffers. So we were already kind of used to having one foot out, but kind of having our sights still focused in on what everyone was doing. Not that we were looking over their shoulders. But all that to say, when we decided we're going to fully launch this M&A process, we took a vacation. That's really not the right word because the vacation was all about the M&A process. We literally stepped away from the business the first week in July. So it was around the July 4th Independence Day holiday here in the States. And the team was focused on, as Dr. Sue said, making sure all our clients were good, making sure all of our Shearshare stays were good, making sure all of our partnerships were still growing and going up and to the right. And we were focused on 100% the M&A process. We were taking the phone calls, we're fielding the emails, we're putting everyone through this kind of strategic funnel and pushing everyone through the process at the same time so that we had the same similar cadence for every conversation. And I'm glad that we gave ourselves that first 30 days before stepping back into the business of just focusing on that, because again, this was new for us. And we wanted to make sure that we were giving ourselves the best opportunity to make this as successful as it could be. And so that was holing away in an Airbnb for 30 days, only talking to our board, our investors, and our M&A consultants, and obviously to the potential buyers. And that was, I think I would do it again like that, because I don't know how I would have had to split my brain into focusing on customer needs and also running the M&A process. I will say that I feel like maybe the acceleration of the process sped up because we were also on this dual path where we were fundraising, which is very difficult or not as easy as some people would say, and then also running this M&A process. And so when it comes to paperwork and due diligence and all the files and documents that needed to be reviewed and passed along, we had that kind of coffer. And so I think that made for an easier process than if we really had to start from ground zero.
Aušra?
Yeah, I agree with the still position. So yeah, balancing M&A process while continuing to run the company, sure, it's definitely super challenging. The deal itself required a lot of attention from due diligence, negotiations, countless meetings, but at the same time, we couldn't afford to lose focus on our core business. So probably most challenging period of the deal was closing part, where we had to ensure the key performance indicators, what we showed, what we budgeted, that we will reach. At the end of the day, this bottom line monthly profit But on the other hand, I believe that focusing on execution more than on M&A itself, or like you can sometimes afford longer period to close, but it led us to the success. So focusing on the long-term success of the company, because as I mentioned, you never know when the buyer will step away, and you will begin from the beginning.
And Aušra, so did you ever have any doubts about the process or during the process?
Honestly, I didn't have. From the beginning, I was confident in our company's value, my team, the direction which we are heading. Of course, the M&A deal is always complex with many moving parts, but it was clear that what we want to achieve, I was happy with the potential shareholder, his values, and then the how sees the view from the strategical or growth perspective. So from the beginning, I was thinking that it's a super good fit even for me to continue and then for our previous strategies. So yeah, probably was in this super good position that haven't doubted none of the minute.
So what about you? Did you experience any doubts on any of your exits?
So during the process, it was interesting. Yes, I had some doubts once in a while because the process, as I mentioned, was very long. And the first one sort of, I'd say, came to fruition eventually faster than the second one. And, once you negotiate the letter of intent, the LOI, I think then you have to run to get the agreement papered, if you will. And I think where I sort of had a little bit of oh my goodness, is this really going to happen? Was when there were 2 points. One was when we had done the LOI and we thought we'd provided them with the hundreds and hundreds of enough diligence documents. The legal firm that we were negotiating with the company with went through an M&A themselves. And they merged with another team of, I don't know, about 20, 50 lawyers. And so all of a sudden on our deal, which was like, we were a small company, we weren't that huge. There was, let's talk about 3 times and like an order of magnitude bigger number of lawyers, and some were in Canada and some in the US. So that had to be managed. So that was a little bit of, oh my goodness, is it going to get done? The other thing that was really interesting for us as a Canadian company at the time was we were in security. And we also, of course, had secret clearance. And the issue with security companies in Canada when they're being bought, usually it goes not too badly. Actually, now it'll probably even be more tricky. But we all of a sudden hit this roadblock where the government of Canada had to approve our deal. And it was the strangest thing. It was like, I thought it was a 60-day hiccup. And the other CEO in the US told me this is going to happen. I was shocked, actually, because I had really high government level contacts and I, got in touch with them and so on. But it turned out that if the government didn't want the deal to go through, then there would have been a block. But essentially after 60 days, the deal went through. So it was an added delay that we really didn't expect. That was a bit of a shock. And we did have an excellent corporate lawyer, and she's done like over 200 M&As. So she was quite shocked. And she said, like, we're the only ones that are, have more than one. So 2 in hand. And so it's kind of kudos to women, if you will, CEOs, that we stick with it. But anyway, so she was very surprised because she sold other big security companies. But I think the issue for us was that we were a very, very visible company. Amica Mobile was very visible in a lot of areas. We had national security forces as customers. And so I think that's probably that was something that was like, what? When you think you're ready, it was like a what?
I love these stories, ladies. Thank you so much for sharing. I firmly believe that I think the most successful founders and entrepreneurs have this positive disposition, right? Almost being drunk with positivity. And that's because optimism is a competitive advantage. And I think many women CEOs have figured that out. And so as much as I would like to say I had zero doubts, like I knew it was going to happen, I remember there was a point in time where at the time, my number one buyer, at least in my mind, pulled out. And we had gotten like to the very end. And I was thinking, how in the world are we going to recoup the same process and kind of restart the conversation with another player? You know, we were halfway through that 3.5-month period. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to take forever. And so I started thinking about, this will take, twice as long, or this may take another 6 months to a year. Or should we focus now on the fundraising and not so much on the M&A process? And so you start to question a lot of things, but I realized that it's just questioning because I've never seen this before. And so I had to talk myself back into that positive place, saying, look, we've made and built an amazing product, an amazing company. We're helping to keep more than 70,000 small businesses across America open today. This is an industry that is, many people would say, recession proof. Like, what we're doing is really solid, really valuable, really good work. We are worth it. And so after I kind of reset my own mental clarity, things got back on track. It's like I said, I wish that I could say had zero doubts and knew it was going to happen. Soup to nuts was going to be a very positive experience. But there was a point where I said, "Ooh, I hadn't seen that before. What does this really mean?" But very happy to end where we did. But it was a good process, a good learning moment for sure.
Having gone through the process yourself, what advice would you give to others thinking about going through a TechM&A? Sue?
I think that it's definitely worthwhile. 90% of software companies, and we were a software company, will exit through a TechM&A. That's just the rule of thumb, if you will. And if you have investors, they want a return. And so unless you're going to go IPO, which some people do, and they stick with it, RPOs are great, but they take a longer time period, and there's a lot of compliance requirements needed for them, like on the NASDAQ, depending which exchange you go and exit on. So I think from that perspective, it's complicated. But I think definitely hiring an organization like Quorum could really help. Like, essentially, even, in my book, I say right from the first day you open your business, I learned this in the second company, you need to build to exit. And so, all your agreements should be papered, everything should be tracked, all your NDAs, all your agreements, all your revenues, all your future customers. And we learned that after the first exit, because in the first exit, because we sold to a NASDAQ traded company, we had to unwind everything. We even had to give back revenues, right? Which really hurt. Because they didn't want any, and I don't blame them, they didn't want any liability on the deal. They didn't want something to come back later on to bite them, whether it was with the intellectual property or with an agreement that we made that they don't want to live up to. So from that perspective, you have to be very, very diligent when you set up your business. But you can hire a company like Quorum, for example, to look around for you, to help you with the valuations. And even if you don't exit, let's say you've run for 2 years and you don't exit, but you hire them to talk to them, it may come back and help you in future, because they always, my lawyer told us that she's sitting on a number of boards, that most companies, medium and larger companies, in their board of directors will have a whiteboard with about a dozen companies that they would buy. In terms of adding technology capability, or for customer revenues, or for getting into new markets. So from that perspective, the startups should always be thinking of that.
Oh, Dr. Sue, I wish that I would have talked to you like 5 years ago, not even a year ago. I concur with what Dr. Sue said. I mean, I wish that we would have started Shearshare with the end in mind. And I guess we thought we were starting the business with the end in mind, like IPO, going to be on the NASDAQ, going to be traded on the New York Stock Exchange. And it didn't end up that way. Not that I'd like to have a plan B, C, D, E, and F, but I wish we would have said, okay, 90% of tech companies, software companies end up being acquired. Maybe we should focus in part of this plan or strategy on what life would look like if that were to happen to us. Because then I would have dealt with so many things differently. And we were really good at papering agreements and making sure we had our ducks in a row. But I wish that I would have been running towards that end goal versus just kind of growing the business, carte blanche. I do want to say thank you hugely to our friends over at Fearless Fund. They were our lead investor on this last the funding, Ari and Simone and that team there, plus Charles Hudson of Precursor Ventures and Mary Grove of Bread and Butter Ventures. They were with us like every step of the way. Even in the middle of the night where, got that email from the number one buyer in my mind that said, oh, I think we're going to sit this one out or pass. And I'm like, now what do you do? Like, it's very easy to kind of get frozen in headlights, but having that support system that you can call on and people who are telling you, you got it, really helps. So make sure you surround yourself with a very solid support staff. And then I would say, really to echo what Dr. Sue said, kind of, if you can, at least wherever you are in the course of your business, start with the end in mind. Whatever it is that you think the outcome of a business could be or what you would like your business to be, at least give yourself the grace to think about and consider what a world with M&A would look like for you. And then I would say just continue to run hard. Numbers never lie, right? And so as long as you are making your customers happy and they continue to vote with their dollars, you're going to end up in a great place either way, whether it's M&A or you just continue to grow that business like a hockey stick.
Aušra?
Yeah, relates to the women's. I believe that if we would from the beginning of the journey would be strict with the process, documenting everything, probably we never will be where we was. We never grew so fast and much, so probably it's like the natural growing path. And yeah, only at some point, starting to think that could be this part done better. I totally agree with you. I'm like super strict regulated from Lithuanian bank. Probably have to do a lot from beginning super well and dig into every procedure and then fulfill many requirements. But sure, if you want to do the business, you are balancing. You are like measuring the risk. Some risks you are taking. For some ones you are closing the eyes because you have actually to show the revenue and then profit, and only when you are reaching this starting to think about the selling process. But I totally agree that on board the good support like advisors, consultants, good lawyers who help you to read the agreements or even fight with the arguments, the other parts' arguments back. Yeah, it's like huge support because it's not like super, it's quite rare occasions, when we end these processes. You can't like know everything. You can't expect each the question or be prepared for it. So in my opinion, the key here and he like driven thing is really to onboard. Do not afraid to spend even for those support people who really can go you through the process successfully and reach the result.
Finally, what's your life like now after the deal? Courtney, is it any different and how so?
Oh gosh. Well, for one, we're with our son in Vegas for every home game. So that's amazing to cheer on the Las Vegas Raiders. Yay! Go Trey. But the day after everything was said and done, I slept. And I think it was kind of like a bittersweet feeling, right? One, I had never gotten, more than like a couple of hours at a time sleep, but I was out for 12 hours. And I think my body and my mind and every cell that's a part of Courtney just needed to rest and to celebrate. At the time, it was kind of bittersweet, right? It's like, again, you're taking your baby and you're dropping it off at the adoptive parents' house. And you're like, okay, I know they're a great family. I know they're going to do right by this baby. I know this is going to go on to become even bigger and better than we could even imagine. But you don't have the mommy, 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 mommy of the baby screaming at you over and over again. And so that feels a little strange for the first, I'm 3 months out. It still feels a little strange, but I don't have the baby needing something from me and me wanting to give to the baby. But I will say that life is sweet. We've been able to spend time with family members that we hadn't been able to do in the last almost decade of our lives. We've been able to be there for the people that we absolutely love. We've been able to, make decisions on, what the thing is that we're going to do next. And, I'm training right now to be a yoga instructor. I'm thinking about going back and getting my doctorate in business administration. Dr. Sue, I feel like I have a couple of books in me that need to get out. I will say that 90 days, 100 days out of the process, life is pretty sweet. Yeah.
Well, so now you're an author. Any comments on life after the deal?
Well, it's interesting because I started writing the book right after the deal closed. I think the deal closed October 2020. And then I hired a book coach. Oh, first I wrote my own version of the book, by the way, which was 12 pages of tech stuff that nobody would understand. And I looked at it and I thought, nobody's going to be able to understand this book. This is really hard. And so then I had coincidentally gotten an award, and I noticed there were 2 women coaches in those award categories. So I contacted one of them and I said, can I hire you as a book coach? And she was great. So she worked with me. And as I said, it took 2.5 years to download all that knowledge from the 2 startups into this, like, what does it take to do a startup? What are the steps, good and bad? And, this book coach was a little bit tough on me because I had to put all this history stuff in there that I didn't think people really needed to read. But it sounds like the reviewers that are looking at it in the US are liking some of those, some of that content, because, a lot of millennials will not know any of this stuff. Like, they don't know what a fax machine is. They don't know what .com was. They don't know any of this stuff. But anyways, I think that was really important to write the book. And then this third startup that we're doing is really more of think of it almost as a service. I feel like we've been so successful that I felt that I needed to mentor. So I do a lot of, I'm involved in at least one women's fund for startup CEOs. And then I'm also doing probably a talk a month on AI and security and safety. And I'm not charging for those because essentially I believe it's really important for people to learn how to protect themselves, embrace the technology to some extent. But really this world of AI that I've been in for 40 years, I would have never imagined some of the bad things going on in it. So from that perspective, I think that's really important. And we do have some young people working with us, keeping us young still in the AI world. And I think explainability and explanation in AI is huge. So that's part of my work. But, I think it's important for people to look at the mistakes of entrepreneurs. And I love the idea that you're doing this podcast. And I think the books are good. I'll probably do a few more books and continue to talk to people about safety, security, entrepreneurship. And I would say that people should monitor my LinkedIn posts for events because I typically announce them online as well.
Aušra, you're still the CEO of your company as well. Is your life different after the exit?
Can't say that it's super different. As I mentioned, I'm really positive with the deal which was done. Still running the company as a seller, happy with the new shareholder, the vision, the strategy. Probably even have some positive changes and differences. Now I'm having additional support and resources to accelerate the company's growth, which is super good. But overall, on day-to-day basis, my role hasn't changed a lot. Team stayed with me, which is also like a huge valuation that we are having this journey together. So yeah, transition went smooth. So I am happy actually with the current situation. If I'm already 4 years in the company, it shows that I'm really hitting in the good position and happy with it.
That's very interesting. And so lastly, what is your next goal?
So one of the things that I've been an activist, I think, for women and women in business and women in tech now, probably since my undergraduate at McGill, where I've been sort of standing up and saying, why aren't we equal? Why aren't we doing, why aren't you funding us? Like the example I'd give is that I told the president of the Business Development Bank of Canada, which has an $8 billion fund, that they need to make 50% of that available for women, which would be $4 billion, because they just typically fund the guys. And I mean, I say this in my book as well, where my emergency communications deck was vetted. But they went and hired they funded the other company that was doing related stuff and gave them $5 million and gave us nothing. And they vetted their deck with our deck, which sucked. But at the end of the day, we successfully exited and they disappeared. So from that perspective, I feel that women are still not trusted enough in business and they need to be better looked at and treated more equally. So I will continue that battle and I will keep saying what I'm saying to all these guys. the bankers.
You're right. And that is so needed. That is so needed. I like to say that I'm on the saddest and the worst list. When it comes to advocating for women in small business, especially us women in tech. It's the list of Black women who have raised over $1 million in VC. And I'm number 30. And I should not know my number. Thank you, Dr. Sue. But if you ask, Steve Case, or you ask Zuckerberg, you ask any of those guys, what's your number? They have no idea, right? Because it's just like you said, that's par for the course. So I think, that is the best and worst list. But it is my life's journey and my life's joy to continue to be advocates for women in business. I don't care what kind of small business you're looking to start, whether it be a salon, whether it be a tech startup. I spent 20 plus years in corporate America before jumping into this thing called entrepreneurship. And I would love to continue to help and to motivate and to encourage women that we can do this. And so if folks would love to continue to be in touch, I do have my LinkedIn page. It's Courtney Caldwell. You can find me on Courtney Caldwell after you follow Dr. Sue on LinkedIn. And then my website, it's just www.bookthecaldwells.com. Just bookthecaldwells.com. Yeah. Thank you.
And last but not least, we would love to hear what you're working on, Aušra. What's next for you?
Yeah, and I, meanwhile, still am concentrating on the Viena goals, strategic goals. Actually have the nice and then brilliant vision to grow from local provider to a European one, not even twice, but close to 10 times, doubled the business there. So started this journey, expanding into new geographies in Europe. So probably the long way ahead, but want to come from this national Lithuanian player to the European one, to become basically number one financial platform for any private person needs.
So can I add just one note, which is 2 organizations that I think are important for women in business. One of them is We Connect International, and that would apply to you too, Aušra, in terms of trying to meet your overall goals. And that, I think, organization puts you in front of huge buyers, whether they're in the US or other countries. And then the other one would be Springboard, which is an organization out of the US that helps women launch businesses, and they've raised billions of dollars for women ventures. And they have different tracks like healthcare, tech, you name it. Sorry, had to put those 2 names in.
It's good.
Thank you, ladies, for your wonderful contributions. I am sure that your outstanding journeys will inspire all our listeners.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion. Are you considering selling your tech company? Head over to quorumgroup.com, our tech exit sponsor. If you'd like to learn more about selling your tech company, join us at one of our Tech M&A Masterclass events. Attendees of the Tech M&A Masterclass will gain practical knowledge on how to achieve the maximum valuation for their company, gained through expert-guided workshops, hands-on exercises, and M&A case studies. Upcoming events in Las Vegas, Dubai, Bangalore, Kuala Lumpur, and Barcelona. Or online through our virtual conferences and webcasts. Head over to WFS.com for more details. We'll see you again for the next episode.